So part of this series of sessions and workshops, you could say, is to become more resilient. And so in defining resiliency, I've made a little document just to have a discussion about what might the link be between health and resiliency. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen and click over into my doc. Maybe I can full screen it. Yes. So here is the basic question. How are health and resilience related? We might just start by going over how to define resilience. And the second one here is more relevant, I think. The ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And for me, the key word there is recover. The first definition is more like very physically minded definition, where if a physical object is compressed, then can it recover its size or shape? That is also called resiliency. And it's kind of funny, this term fragile and robust and anti-fragile. These are concepts from a guy called Nassim Taleb. Don't know if you guys heard about him, but he came up with the concept of black swan, among other things. And now he has this triad of concepts called fragile, robust, anti-fragile. So let's say, what would be a fragile object? That could be not a safety pin, but one of these paper clips. A paper clip is fragile to disorder, because if you keep bending a paper clip, then it's only a matter of repetition before it breaks. So it's fragile to being bent, right? Let's say the paper clip was robust to being bent. Then you could continue bending it forever, seemingly, and it wouldn't break. Kind of like a branch, like a living tree branch. You could really bend that one many times, of course, without overdoing it, before it would break. And the point where it would break is, you could say, its level of resilience to bending. And then there is anti-fragile, things that benefit from disorder, which is very interesting concept. And we are anti-fragile to a certain point. We're not anti-fragile to smoking, because carcinogens in our lungs or smoke in our lungs is always a bad thing, kind of like, not that you necessarily get cancer or anything, but generally it's not like there's a good amount of smoke in your lungs, like we talked about in the video about stress. Things we are anti-fragile to, on the other hand, are movement, physical forces, and many other things. So resilience, the ability to recover from change. So as activists, you could say we want to be at least robust or resilient to the stresses of life, so we can continue doing our work. And by using anti-fragility and stressing ourselves in the right way and recovering afterwards, we can grow healthier, stronger, whatever you want to call it, increase our capacity. And that is the goal of these trainings. Does any of this start some thoughts now before we move on? Are there any questions or reflections about resilience? If anything comes up, you can always unmute yourself. So these concepts, I really like them to kind of get us an idea about how, what kind of things are good for us. So stress is this concept that it has a quite negative connotation. We've all heard these things that, stress is bad. And what is really meant by that is that long-term stress is really freaking bad. Because if it's long-term, then almost by definition, we're not recovering from it. So we're not being anti-fragile or resilient to it, but we might be fragile to long-term stress. Whereas short-term stress is actually quite good for us. For example, our adrenal response. On the short term, it can really enhance our immune function, or it can get us out of trouble, because if you get scared or angry, then there will be a response really fast through the body that enables you to move more and faster and more powerful. For example, increasing your ability to run or other things. But on the short term, this is fine as long as the system has the context later on to flush it out, to recover, to relax. So maybe we shouldn't go through all of these. Looking at the screen, you can just take your time now to pick and choose. From our perspective, being interested in ecology, I really like this one that I found, where the health concept there is related to the relationship between my body and the world body, the big body. In fact, I'll send the link. I really strongly recommend Frank Forensic and a free talk he has about called The Big Body, and it's all about an ecological approach to health. The classic definition of health, just to visit one place that you might have heard, is this definition here, which is a via negativa definition. It says, or it's kind of a perfect definition. It says there is absence of disease or infirmity. That's like via negativa, defining something by what it is not. And then here's the kind of hard to achieve: a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Now, this definition has been criticized quite a bit for exactly this part. Like, what the hell? Nobody ever achieves this. It's not almost impractical, because obviously I'm not like in a hedonistic super dream where all my desires have been fulfilled. At least that would be quite a lucky state, or very short-lived state for me. So that definition is a bit like what to use. We could say that's the perfect definition, perfect health, whatever we want that to mean. Is there any other ones catching your eye, or any thoughts on this? I don't know if you've discussed health definitions before, but it's actually quite interesting discussion, even without having any health background, I would say.
The health as resource really catches my eye, because I have a friend that has a chronic illness, and like, now that I see this definition, it makes perfect sense, because health for her is something she has to manage constantly, and see how much she's spending at a given time in order to function and to interact with friends or get things done. So it makes a lot of sense as something, as if it's sort of like money, which you have to like save or spend strategically. And so that's super interesting, and I think it's really relevant for people that have chronic conditions.
Yeah, I like, to be honest, that metaphor of health as a kind of a quantity that we want to invest in or increase, like a bank metaphor. I don't know, maybe some people don't like it. The things I don't like is mechanical metaphors for the body, because, for example, the car is a really horrible metaphor for our system, because a car is fragile to use. You drive a car, the longer it drives, there's some part of maintaining a car by driving it, but mostly it will just go to pieces the more you use it. Not the case with us. But I actually do find that the health as a bank account resonates in some way, because when we invest in our own health, it does have also some kind of return on investment, you could say. And also it emphasizes that we don't have eternal health behavior at our disposal. We are not professional athletes that only live to feel great in our bodies and perform at a really high level. like that. And so, for example, people with chronic illness probably are extra challenged in managing. If I have only so much energy to invest in myself versus what I want to do living with my chronic illness, then you have to prioritize, and you can't, you know, spend endless amounts of energy. Okay, yeah, so that was me going on a tangent off of your thought, Laura. Great. Yeah, anything else?
No, I think I'll just add to that, like what you said now with energy and thinking of health as somehow the ability to give energy to things. And if it's physical or mental or whatever kind of energy, it's a nice image. And I think we can learn a lot from people with, for example, chronic illnesses there as people without, because I think it's very important, whoever you are and whatever your abilities, it's important to notice and take care of your energies in that sense, and where you want to spend it and not. There's also the term. Okay.
Yeah, I highlighted this one. It's in the bottom for some reason, but yeah, there is one. Yeah, I just found that one too. It's speaking a lot to what you're saying, Tanya. Managing your energy, making sure you get energy, and actually one related idea to how we've been practicing, like what we haven't done during this resilience training is to do high intensity interval training, which is great, and it's also quite a stressful way to work out, and it has great effects on the body because we are anti-fragile to high intensity, sure. But then there's this guy called Paul Chek, a very famous guy in the health world, who has the concept of working in. So let's say if you do a high intensity workout, it's a workout. We spend energy, and maybe it leads acutely to a net loss of energy. Whereas working in, you could say, is defined by a net gain in energy. Isn't it a nice concept, working in instead of working out? So full credit to Paul Chek for that idea. And so we've been doing things where we breathe through the nose, for example. And this is a way of making sure it puts a cap on how hard we can go on a certain exercise. And it keeps us in this working in state instead of working out. And I have nothing against working out at all. It's great to work out. But it's very interesting how if you work out, then right after you've worked out, you lost energy, and it will take days for you to recover that energy. And you will come back stronger if you recover well. But when you work in, if you work more like 70–80% of your max, and then you come out of a workout or a work in or some kind of movement, and you feel more energetic. Yoga is a good example. Playing some sports, it depends how hard you go, but I'm sure you have experiences of this, that there are certain activities that increase your energy. They don't take your energy away. So funny that you would you said that spontaneously, and yeah, I'd saved that one in the bottom. Is there anything else? I mean, while we're here, we might as well just cover it. The biomedical approach. There is this you know, the WHO model for health, or generally in all the health professions now, the model that is used or should be used is the biopsychosocial model of health. So there is all these factors, and the biomedical approach, the classical approach using drugs and operations and a kind of mechanistic view of the human body is purely biological. And because it's unidimensional or focuses on one place, you could say, it has a tendency to be very fragile. Trying to fix something with a pill is typically a pretty fragile approach. What if the pill doesn't work? and so on. Whereas when you approach health from a systems perspective, and you from an ecological perspective, and you have all these different parts of health, which is also psychological and social and maybe narrative, and yeah, we could maybe think of more, then we'll have more of an anti-fragile or at least robust way of health. Speaking of this, I'm reminded, like, you know, if you have a monocrop on a field, then that is very fragile to a disease. Whereas if you have a permaculture garden where there's all these different plants and the nutrients are circulating, that perma garden is much more resilient to some disease spreading in the plants or other things. Does that make sense? And we can think about ourselves in the same way, I think, and look around to all these different factors, our bodies, the biological, our minds, the psychological, and our social network is also hugely important. There have been studies showing that the most important thing for your happiness, it's not your physical health, it's your social health. I think multiple studies have showed this on these like really long-term studies following people for years and years and years. So what are we left with? Any thoughts before closing up on this interesting question? Maybe we should try and answer now the discussion question. Laura?
Well, it's like a thought that I just had, that there doesn't need to be an answer to that, but I was thinking in terms of ecological health, I do see a lot of a connection, but at the same time, let's say if I want to improve my health and I go to a doctor, it wouldn't make sense for the doctor to be like, well, you have to clean all the microplastics out of the sea, and you need to, you know, those kinds of things. So I was wondering, how can you address health on an individual level when your health is being affected by those things that are so out of control as a singular person?
Yeah. So how I would frame your question, Laura, is what might go wrong, or how do we address health when my body and the big body are completely related, and when all of healthcare is mainly aimed at the individual. So I'm a system, I'm biopsychosocial, but I'm nested, I'm embedded in the natural world. And so my health depends directly on the health of the earth and the water and so on. Yeah, so that is a problem, and you know, there's more of a focus now on mental health in the healthcare system. So you might get this like, well, getting a friend, if you're lonely, like that will be so much better than getting, you know, a pill for your headache, just to be but then cleaning up the ocean and having high quality earth for our vegetables, like, whoa, that would be next level if a doctor would prescribe this for you. So yeah, that's a great problem, Laura, to how to address people's health, because we don't have a systems perspective on it. In general, at least.
Yeah, I'll just, I don't know, it's connecting somehow to what you were, or what Laura mentioned now. When I'm thinking resilience, I'm thinking something very long-term, or more, it's long-term and it's going deeper somehow. And I read this beautiful text where this woman, she's writing about resilience in the context of affirmative practices, or affirmativity as a kind of empathy practice. I don't know if I can find or share it somehow with you, because it's really, it's not too long and it's quite nice talking about both resilience and affirmativity in that sense.
That sounds like a psychological and social approach to it. Like, because let's say I'm caught in shame, I might be very unresilient as a person, versus if I'm being affirmed by my network. Is it something, or yeah, that's what I'm just thinking actually in my own head when I'm hearing.
It's actually the way she's describing, or the way she's talking about it, is more in the sense of this anti-fragility, and this, like, how can you benefit and be flexible with what's happening and the circumstances. And also like recognizing that not everything is easy, and there will be problems, and you know, so not ignoring pain, not ignoring problems, but more finding a constructive way of dealing with it.
Yeah.
And this for me connects very much with like health as well. Like, how do you attain or work for a long-term, deeper sense of health, like treating the sickness or whatever it is instead of the symptoms of it.
Yeah. Why did the suffering arise in my system, and going through those roots instead of addressing the suffering. Yeah, so I'm also reminded of the health as resource and the ability to take care, like this coping aspect, because life is freaking hard. And so to be healthy is to maybe have some resources or the ability to deal with this hardship that we face, different kind of stressors.
I just share the name of the text and the author in the chat.
Yeah, totally.
I'll
redo this document in a nicer way, so it's a little bit more beautiful and full, and I'll put in some notes from our talks, and maybe I'll put in that link as well. Yeah, so do you have something, Vibke, before I kind of conclude a little bit on this question?
I think what I've been thinking about is I kind of agree with what, like, most of the things that have been said, and also especially the first bullet point under 2, the long term. I think that when you find the relation between health and resilience is also, I think, giving yourself time and kind of being in it for the long run, I guess. And it's something that kind of sticks with you your whole life. And I think the part where you kind of help yourself stay or get healthy and get or stay resilient is when you just keep working on it in a way. So it's not just done suddenly and then you don't need to take care of it anymore.
Yeah, I like that, and I'm thinking about how the letting go of this final fix. There is no final fix to my health, and there's no hack that I can perform in my life that will make me permanently resilient. And one of the things that would eat away my health is to be very short term. Because what I'm thinking about in our fast-paced society with the internet, the fast amount of information and choices coming all the time is giving low chance of recovery. Like, you know, if you allow something to take a long time and grow organically, then you know, there will be more space in between to rest and integrate. Whereas if you are trying to really cram it in, and when there is not a lot of space in between all the different parts of our lives, yeah, there will be low recovery. And if there's low recovery, we will at best be robust, or we will be fragile, and our health or capacity will tend to go down, I think. So I really resonate with that too. We want a long-term approach to health, so that our resilience is not just a short burst of effort and we give everything to some action or to a little project, and then we kind of maybe, you know, stopped being part of the organization because that was too much, right? You know what I mean? Rather really make it a long-term investment, to use that word. I see it, you know, I need to take care of my system so that my system can overflow with energy, this working in again, instead of me overspending myself and losing energy over time. Then I can give so much more to, you know, others or the cause or to, you know, nature, if my system is building a net gain of energy, so that I can basically serve and be part of the solution. And there's nothing wrong with being spent and not being able to contribute for a while, but it's really clear, like, we cannot be activists on the long term if we don't take care of ourselves. And so this is how I see the health and resilience connection as activists. So on that note, we've probably talked enough. Should we call it now? We can return to it, but yeah, I'll stop the share and end the thing. And thank you very much for all the input. So nice to discuss this. It's an interesting topic.